Hello and welcome. You can tell this week's video is going to be a big one. I'm going to be sharing my setup that I use for video podcasts and live streams. My name is Cree, and on this channel, I share tech with context. So I go over all of the equipment I use for my video production services, but I'm also going to show you exactly how I use it so that you can potentially use this on your own. So today, we're doing something really exciting. We're going to do a 3-camera setup. Now, you can use any number of cameras for this depending on the gear that you're using, but this is the typical setup that I use for video podcasts and also if I want to live stream. So this is really nice. I have the switcher here. If I want to go over to camera 1, I can go ahead and switch that right there. And you've already seen the camera 2 view and then the camera 3 view over here. Now, there's got to be at least a million different ways to do this. There's so much equipment out there. There's different setups, different considerations. This is what I found to be the most efficient for my personal workflow. Today, I'm going to go over the equipment. If you want to see how I do all of my editing after I'm done recording, I'm happy to share that too. Just leave a comment below and I'll maybe put a future video together about that. But today, what I'd like to share before I hop into the details of the setup is that I found that when doing video production, the more workflows that you can create that are the same, the more efficient you're going to be. So what's nice is if I have a client and I'm going to do a video podcast with them, I'm going to grab all this equipment. And then also if I'm ever live streaming an event, or even if I'm live streaming a podcast or some sort of an interview or anything like that, I'm using the same equipment and my workflow is the same. So this covers a large majority of the projects that I work on. Once I have it dialed in and it's working for me, then I don't have to think too much about it anytime I'm going out to record with a client. So today, let's go ahead and hop in and get into the details of this equipment setup. For video, you'll want 3 cameras. Your cameras should all have a clean HDMI output. You're going to be outputting that into this switcher. This is the A10 Mini Pro ISO by Blackmagic. We'll be using this one today. Also, you'll want 3 HDMI cables to connect those cameras to the switcher. And finally, you will be recording externally in this setup. So you will want an external SSD with at least 1 terabyte of space. On the audio side, we'll be using the Rodecaster Pro 2. You can capture up to 4 audio sources using XLR inputs with this device. You'll also want microphones, and it depends on the number of guests that you have for whatever you're recording. In this case, we're doing 1 today, so 1 XLR cable for each guest. And as always, you should have a nice pair of comfortable headphones so that you can monitor your audio during the recording. This is what the setup looks like in the studio. It's a lot, it really is. But what we'll do is we'll hone in on all of the different types of equipment that I use for both audio and video and also for lighting. So before we hop into audio and video, this is what my lighting setup looks for this shot. I want to light everyone's faces, so I'm using this dome light. It's on a C-stand. I also have just kind of an accent light over on the C-stand to help light up the area, and I can also use that as a hair light for whoever's sitting right here in this chair, in the second chair. And up here, I also have a hair light for anybody who is sitting in this chair. There's some accent lighting in the back. It's really up to you what you want to do with that kind of a setup. But this is what the studio lighting looks like so that I can be sure just to light everyone's faces up nice and brightly. Let's start with the video. So obviously I have 3 cameras set up. You can see that I'm showing up on the monitor now. You can see all the video angles in that shot. Now I use the A10 Mini Pro ISO. This is a video switcher. It's really fantastic. It works so well. And the main reason why I use this one is because you can record out of it or you can live stream out of it. So the output's a little different depending on whatever it is that you want to use. But if you can see right here, these buttons are really nice. If I ever want to switch the camera angle, I just have to go ahead and press whatever button, and you can see that the camera angle is going to switch once I do that. I'm using a Ninja 5 as my monitor. Now you don't have to use this particular one. I use it because I can also record on it just as a backup in case I want to do that in any kind of a situation. It's just a monitor that I have, so I use it. And what's nice about the ATEM is you can switch the view on this. So if you also want to see what each camera angle looks like, so that's camera angle 3 right there. And then if I want to switch to 2, I can see that angle nice and clearly, or 1, you can see camera angle 1 there too. So if I want to see all of them all at once, I'm just going to go ahead and select that option. Not all switchers have that option. This particular switcher does, and I use it quite often. So let's go ahead and move to the back of the switcher so you can see how I have everything attached. Here we are on the back of the ATEM Mini Pro ISO. So let me just show you what's going on here. So over on the right is mic input 1. I actually have this stereo out from the Rodecaster Pro 2 running over to my ATEM Mini Pro. That's so I can capture audio. I do record audio using the Rodecaster Pro 2, but this helps me sync it in post. Each of the cameras, these are the HDMI inputs. You can see that I'm using 3 inputs. There is room for a 4th there if you want to do that. This particular switcher gives me an HDMI out. I'm running that up to my monitor so that I can keep an eye on all camera angles while I'm recording. And this USB out, this one is really important because if I'm doing a video podcast, I can record all of my files to an external SSD drive. The other thing I can do is when I'm live streaming, I can use this USB out to actually connect to my laptop, and then that's how I stream using Zoom or StreamYard or Riverside, whatever streaming software you have that you're using for your live streams, you can do that too. But if I'm doing a video podcast, I'm recording externally and using a laptop. I could also record to a laptop too, but I use this external SSD for majority of my projects. As far as audio goes, I am using the Shure SM7B to capture audio for this particular video. I'm running that XLR mic into the back of the Rodecaster Pro 2, and let's go ahead and walk around here. I know there's lots going on. Again, this will take 4, it'll take more than 4, but for this video, it'll take 4 XLR inputs, which means 4 microphones. I'm using the stereo out. I'm running this audio over to the ATEM Mini Pro to capture audio for all of my video, to sync all that in post. Back here, this is where my headphones are plugged in. And you'll notice that I'm also using another headphone port to send the audio signal over to the Ninja. Now, you don't need to use a Ninja like I mentioned before, but if I ever want to use the video out of the Ninja 5, then I am I'm capturing the audio there so I can sync it in post if I'd like. For this setup, if I want to record my audio, I can just press the record button on the Rodecaster Pro 2, but if I am live streaming, I would just send the USB-C signal out here, and this would be my audio input, again in Zoom or Riverside or StreamYard or whatever video conferencing software you're using. This would show up as your audio input. And then this is the power button over here. So that's what the back of the Rodecaster Pro 2 looks like. Let's go ahead and hop around to the front. All right, we're back on the front end here, and before I start any video production, I'm going to do the sound checks right here in the Rodecaster Pro 2. But the most important thing is to make sure that you're hitting the record buttons. So first things first, what you're going to do is right here on the ATEM Mini Pro, to record your video into the external SSD, you're going to want to hit this record button before you get going. And then what you'll want to do is head on over to the Rodecaster Pro 2. You're going to hit this record button. So all red lights, you want to make sure all the red lights are on. If I want a backup recording of any of this, I'm actually going to switch the view. You can see the view of the Ninja 5 is showing all camera angles. Well, if I record this screen, then I'm going to get, the recording is going to look like this, and I can't really use that in an edit if I ever need to. So I'm going to go ahead and come over here and hit program to switch the view. There I am right there. So right now we're showing camera 1, camera 2, and camera 3, which is pretty cool. So camera 3 would be for a person sitting here. Camera 2 would give us the wide angle. And then camera 1 would be for whoever, if you want to focus in on whoever's sitting in this seat. All right, so once that's set up, I can go ahead and hit record on the on the Ninja 5, and now I have a backup recording. So I'm recording my video and audio here. I'm recording my video and audio here. Right here, I am recording my audio. And then there is even one extra step that I take here in a minute. All right, let's have a chat about the setup because it is a lot. In fact, when I go on site with clients, it takes me about a half an hour to set this up, including, all the tripods, all the cameras, making sure all the equipment is there. But again, this workflow works really well for me. So it's something that I use time and time again. And if you are someone who records often, now you understand why having a studio set up and having all this equipment just set up and ready to go at all times is really the preferred way to go. And you can certainly do that with this setup. All right, let's talk about the video and the audio and what those limitations really are. For the most part, you've seen this setup for if I'm recording a podcast. That means I'm not live streaming. So I don't have a laptop here right now. That would be the additional piece of equipment to use if you are live streaming. Again, you just are going to run the live stream out of the video out here, the audio out here, run both of those USB-C cables to your laptop or computer, and then in Zoom or in whatever video conferencing software you're using, you can actually select where that input is coming from. So if you're live streaming, make sure that you are going into your interface and you're making those changes so that when you're broadcasting, people are getting the best video and the best audio possible. Now, there are some limitations to this setup, and this kind of has to do with the types of cameras that you might purchase for this setup. If you are familiar with cameras, you notice that I am using cameras that have 4K capability. And I think that when we're choosing which cameras we want to use for our setup, most of us are going out and we just want the best camera that's out there, 4K, and we're paying top dollar for that tech. What I want to share with you right now is that isn't necessary. So if you have a studio and you're only doing video podcasts or live streaming, if you're a gamer and you're only live streaming, and you're using the A10 Mini Pro ISO and a majority of video switchers that are on the market. I should say a majority of video switchers that have multiple inputs right now on the market, it has limitations. So for instance, this particular switcher can only stream to 1080p, and it can only record and or send an output at a max of 1080p. That means that whatever I'm recording on my external SSD drive or whatever signal I'm sending out of the switcher, it can't even go to 4K. So there's no point, if you're going to use this switcher, there's no point in spending all that extra money on a 4K camera unless you're actually going to use that 4K tech. So you don't have to have super expensive cameras for this setup. As long as your camera has a clean HDMI out, and it can go to 1080p, and most of these switchers are at 30 frames per second. Those are the tech specifications that you want to look for when you're choosing your camera or cameras for this type of setup. So it just doesn't have to be too expensive. There's tons of used 1080p cameras that are great quality out on the market. Just keep in mind they do need to have a clean HDMI output. The other thing that's happening here is I kind of went over how I capture my video and my audio. And I do have a backup system. And, I might even get a couple comments from you that this might be a little bit overkill. But guess what? I don't care. When I'm on site and I'm capturing an interview, I have backup systems in place just in case things are going to go wrong. Because, for instance, I recently recorded an interview with a Holocaust survivor. This is in my opinion, probably a once in a lifetime opportunity. And when I'm there on site to record it, I want to make sure I get it recorded. And if any issues come up along the way, I want to make sure that I have captured that interview. So what I'm doing with the A10 Mini Pro ISO is I'm recording to an external SSD that will record not only the switching that I'm doing during my recording, but it's also going to give me an output of each file that's coming from my camera. Now, those are 1080p resolution files. The other thing that's happening is I'm just using my Ninja 5 as my monitor. Again, any monitor will do in this situation, but because I have this here, I may as well record on it. So that's why I'm running audio also to the Ninja 5. It's a backup for me. And additionally, it's a backup for video and audio. And additionally, I can use it as a monitor on site. So since I have it here, why not use it, right? Now, if you want 4K quality for your video podcasts, you can't do it for your live streams using this equipment. You'd have to look at a different switcher that might have 4K capabilities. Those are really expensive. And 1080p is fine for these types of situations. In fact, your file sizes are a lot smaller and manageable using 1080 right now anyways. But if you want 4K quality, what I'll do is I'll set my cameras to 4K and I'll just record each camera on the internal SSD card. Now, of course, I'm limited to the size of that memory that's on that SSD card. Additionally, I'm not running like quality audio to my cameras. So I can sync that in post using the audio out of the Rodecaster Pro 2. But keeping in mind that even though my cameras are set to 4K, I'm running them through this switcher. And if I want to use the recordings out of the SSD, they're only going to be 1080p, even though my cameras are set to 4K. That covers the limitations on the video side. On the audio side, the Rodecaster Pro 2 is just such an easy interface to use. You can control audio levels for each person. The more people that are in the conversation, like right now today, I only have one audio input going into the Rodecaster Pro 2, but I can adjust the different volume levels based on the people. I can also turn volume levels off if I want to, and I can control the audio out because I am running audio out to my A10 Mini Pro ISO, so that that audio is baked in, and then also to my Ninja 5. The other thing about audio I think we forget is as a producer, you want to be monitoring your audio at all times, because if the audio goes bad, you can just stop the production right away and fix it. So I have a lot of redundancy set up on the video side. I am capturing audio into some of the video recordings that I have here, but at the end of the day, I want the audio that's coming right out of the Rodecaster Pro 2. So it's optimized, it's great. You can do different optimizations here in the Rodecaster Pro 2, and I'm monitoring that audio at all times so that on site, I'm fixing any audio issues now because I can't fix them later. If audio is peaking and I don't realize it, well, when I go to do the edit, then I'm in a lot of trouble. The other thing is if you are live streaming and you're running audio out of the Rodecaster Pro 2, you're just monitoring that, making sure it all sounds good, and that would run right into your laptop, as I mentioned before. This is just a fantastic device. Just make sure that you're always hitting that record button. There's a record interface right here that'll tell you how much time has gone by. You are recording to an internal SSD card right here on the Rodecaster Pro 2. That's where I'm taking my audio from to go ahead and optimize that audio and use it in post. And now here's the thing about live streams, and especially video podcasts. In my opinion, if the video's mediocre, if the lighting's mediocre, the most important thing is your audio. Your audio just has to sound good in these situations. I think people will continue to tune in and watch if the video and the lighting isn't that great. But at the end of the day, if something is hard to listen to, people are going to tune away. So in that case, you want to make sure your audio is dialed in, and the Rodecaster Pro 2 is an excellent tool to use for that. Well, that's the rundown on the equipment I use in the workflow I use to capture video podcasts and also live stream events, interviews, anything that I want to live stream. And as you can see, it's really easy to switch here on the switcher as I'm talking. So on many occasions, what I'll do is if I want a very simplified workflow, I'm going to go ahead and actively switch the cameras during the recording. So if you remember, I mentioned this earlier in this video, when I am recording using this Blackmagic Design A10 Mini Pro ISO, it will capture the recording of me switching. It'll also output a project file that you can open directly in DaVinci Resolve. And these cuts will be baked into the video. So if you want an extremely simplified workflow, I actually recommend live switching during the recording. Even if it isn't a live stream, just go ahead and record the different camera angles as you're going. Get those cuts. You can adjust the cuts in a DaVinci Resolve project, but the output from this is a project file that already has the cuts in it. I also have the cuts captured in my Ninja 5. So that is, it's actually really nice. I haven't had any issues with that. I can adjust the cuts in the DaVinci Resolve project if I need to. But if you are doing live streams, if you're capturing events, it's good to practice. And I also have the 3 individual outputs that are output in the SSD. So I have the individual video files, and keep in mind that as a backup, I'm also recording into the individual SSDs on each of my cameras. It's just redundancy. It might be overkill, but it saved me on more than one occasion. And in my opinion, it's here, it's set up, so you might as well be recording. So if anything goes wrong along the way, at the end of the day, you've captured whatever it is that you need to capture, and you're all set. There you have it. That is the complete setup of all the equipment I use to do video podcasts and if I ever want to live stream any type of an event. Remember, you don't have to use 3 cameras. You can use 1, or depending on the equipment you have, the equipment I have here can accommodate up to 4 cameras. You might be in a different situation depending on the equipment you use. But as usual, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, leave those below. And before you go, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, giving a little thumbs up, and I'll see you in next week's video. Take care.